Ready?
I'm ready.
Go. Okay, here we go. I'm Josh Sigman.
And I'm Brynn Rouse.
I'm a mortgage guy with a passion for money, business, and elevating my game. Brynn is my co-host. She's my friend and marketing director for my mortgage team.
That's right. I'm a marketing girl, a mama of 3, and wife of 1. And like Josh, elevating life, business, and relationships, well, it's my jam.
This season's topic, elevate your game.
What do you want?
Do you want to push personal limits, find joy, be more present?
Be a better parent, have a sexier marriage, make more money, save more money, start your own business, develop a hobby, or strengthen important relationships?
Impact the world, be a better boss, or create a stronger business? Then you are ready to elevate.
And this is the place to do it.
Are you ready? Sigman Sense Season 3, elevate your game. Welcome back. Sigman Sense, working on the more ideas and elevation. And today we want to work on a lighter segment, a shorter segment for those of you guys that only have about 30 minutes of time to work on how to elevate accountability within your team or your company. I like
that you think accountability is light.
Hell yes, it is.
That's funny.
Okay, this is another way to say it. It's an easy concept. It's difficult to do, right?
Yes.
But what I do think we've done a good job of with the 5 things we identified. It really becomes really clear about what's needed to have an accountable culture in general.
Yes.
And what might be lacking from your small business, large business, sales team or otherwise.
Mm-hmm.
Do you agree with that statement?
I do agree with that statement.
Okay, but before you go further, you have to subscribe and like.
That's right.
And check us out on other channels. If you're listening, you can watch us. If you're watching, you can listen to us.
Yes, for sure.
But how do you want to start this off? Let's starting with number 1, I guess, right?
I mean, that's typically where we would start. So the first way we have to elevate accountability on your team or in your environment is to understand the differences of A, B, and C players.
Oh my God! So the lack of understanding here is immense to me. So do you want me to
it's pretty crazy.
It is. Well, how do you define what would you say the general definition of an A player is? What would you say the general, not for our standards, but if you go to any place and you talk to some employee and they think that they're an A player, because damn, everyone thinks they're an A player.
So shows up on time,
cool.
Does their job.
Cool.
And can be counted on.
Cool.
They're reliable.
Yep. And so to me, that's a B player.
Yeah, 100%.
And that's the problem. So I think a lot of you, so you might even be thinking you're listening to this and you want a raise. B players don't get raises very often. Mm-hmm. Just be clear about this, okay? So said a different way, a B player absolutely does their job. They do it in the time that's allotted. They show up and leave when they're supposed to. Mm-hmm. And to me, that's a B player. Okay, so
that goes back to basic expectations of the job.
Well, just think about the job duties are met, period.
Yeah, and this is not a bad thing either,
nope.
Right? So
most companies need at least, I'd say, 70% B players to function.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah, so this is not a negative thing whatsoever.
I want to quantify this. The B player is paid and gets exactly what they're worth.
There you go.
So let's say it that way. Because we know this, because there was when they interviewed for the job, there was a set of job duties with a salary attached.
Yeah.
This is worth this. That's what a B player is. Make sense?
Yep.
Okay. So then what is the differentiator between a B player and A player?
So the differentiator between a B player and an A player is the A player does something almost daily to wow their boss.
Or the client.
Or
absolutely.
Something that is over and above.
Absolutely.
Consistently.
Yep.
All the time.
So I want you to think about this. So maybe you are the B player and you're like, oh my God, I just got slapped in the face and this is good to listen to. So just because your company has done it one way forever doesn't mean that the company assumes it's the best way. So you might have come from a different job doing the same thing with a different system. That system might be more efficient. And so while you're doing your job every day, you might start integrating some other system or portal or
making
checklist
a new spreadsheet.
To make the job more efficient or more productive and bringing that information to the boss. Because as a boss, think about this. You just brought to me something that shows that you can do 30% more work in the same amount of hours if we just change this system, or I just bought this CRM system. I'm in. That's a wow, right? So what you got to understand is that the above and beyond is the differentiator. The wow is the differentiator between a B player and an A player. What I also think what's really shocking for most people to understand is what a C player is and how at risk they are for their job, even when they have moments of brilliance. So what is a C player? How do you define that?
So a C player is defined by someone who has moments of absolute greatness only to be followed by moments of absolute disaster.
Yep. So inconsistency is the death of a business, right? Like the reason I hire anyone is for leverage. So I need to know that I can remove this set of jobs from my plate and put it over on somebody else's plate for them to do that job as well or better than me. And I've got to trust that it's actually being done because if you, assuming that you had great training, right? We'll get that in a second. But if you had the right training for the job, then if I leave you alone, you're finally doing a great job, and I go 2-3 weeks at a time, and now I can move on to the next agenda item, the next thing to build the business, only for you to completely drop a turd on the business. And I've got to go back and that's where micromanagement comes from. Micromanagement comes from, I can't trust you to do what I hired you to do. Yeah. Right. So if you don't like being,
I can't wait for you to be on again. Like I can't wait for you to
And it's so frustrating because now I'm doing, it's double work, right? Somebody else is having to double check you all the time if you're that C player, because while you're so good most of the time and you're really frustrated while you're micromanaged, it's because you're inconsistent. Right? So the reason why we started here when it comes to elevating accountability is you can only really hold people accountable. And I eventually get to surround yourself with purely self-accountable people by understanding what an A player, B player, and C player is. A C player requires constant management and micromanagement. A B player, you can have a few team meetings and a few metrics to check in and make sure they're on track because they're going to do what they were told to do in the time that they were told to do it. An A player, you can give an idea. And if you give them that idea, they'll probably come up with something better than what the idea was, right? And
there's so much trust that comes with that too.
There's so much trust.
Which is why, as a team leader or a manager, there is nothing better than having full trust in someone that you've hired to do a job. Like it is just
the word I've used
rewarding.
Recently is just I feel safe.
Yes.
I feel safe. Yes. This person's got my back. This person's got my back. Not because of they jump in front of the bullet, but I know that they're going to do their job at the best of their abilities all the time. Right.
And whatever decision they make, I know
it was with their best intentions for both the client and the company.
And that is true leverage. That is true leverage.
Yep. And so I'm going to put the bow on this one because it's really important why this will help out with accountability too. Is when you finally have a team of B's and A's only, then you have the ability to delegate by objective, not by task.
Oh, yes.
And that's an important piece of this. So let me explain what that is. A delegation by objective is, hey, Brynn, I'm thinking about doing this podcast. I've got a lot of things on my mind. I'm not very great at journaling. So what do why don't you give me some ideas of how this might look, which was basically a conversation 4 years ago. And, 30, 60 days later, we can do this. We can rent this studio space. Here's what it would look like. Here's what I found out. Here's how I can open these channels, That's delegation by objective. Delegation by task would be, hey, Brynn, I'm going to, by the way, including coming up with the brand, the songs, the openers, the closers, just everything, right? But by task would be, hey, Brynn, find me a studio.
Outline the cost for me.
Get me the cost for me.
Yes.
I want to approve every single contract. I want you to go ahead and write some ideas around what we could do, but I want to sign off on everything.
Right.
I don't trust that what you're going to do, basically is what I'm saying, is going to be accurate. A, B, C, D, F, and G in this order. This is what I want. So the more you can get away from the delegation by task and go to delegation by objective, if you've really got strong A's and B players, the faster you'll go in any business you've got.
So another great thing to realize the difference between objective and task is when I assign when I assign something to a team member, I deliver the who, what, when, where, and why as objective, and leave off the how.
I love that. It's a great tip.
Yeah, leave off the how. And I explain, especially if it's someone that's newer, I'm leaving off the how because I trust you to figure it out.
Yep.
If you need help, I do expect you to come and ask me, and I'll guide you and direct you and give you some pointers. But I really think that you've got this. I don't care how it's done.
Yep. Here's the budget. Here's the time frame. Here's what I want. Here's why I want it.
Yeah. So leave off the how. That will get you into objective territory.
What's the number 2?
So the second way to elevate your accountability on your team is to identify what the minimum standards are. Yep. And stick to them, stay firm with them. So this could be standards of production. This could be
standards of excellence, standards of service.
Yes. Standards of the core values, the all the things.
It could be you think about safety standards for industries. Think about number of units created if you're making widgets. Like what's the minimum expectation and sticking firm to it.
Mm-hmm. So I'd like to do this by, this almost goes into each person's top 3 job duties in a sense. So whenever we are coming up with the minimum standards, it's what position are we looking for? So let's say it's marketing. Okay, so what do we need most out of the marketing department?
Right.
And so if it's leads then the minimum standard or the metrics needs to be tied to lead generation. Yep. Now, past that, what else do we need? Well, we need new accounts. Okay, so let's put a metric in place for that. Yep. So think through exactly what you need
out of each position. Yep. And so the hard part is this. The hard part is when you create a minimum standard of excellence, sticking to it when somebody has a bad week, month, year, whatever, right?
Yeah, what's the variance?
There's a whole lot of really nice people that still shouldn't have that job, that aren't best suited for the job, or that are going to slow down the success of the company.
Or, it's also a good indicator of, hey, what's going on?
Yep.
Is there something going on personally? Is there a fundamental training issue that we missed?
Yep.
Did you not understand the task?
Did you misrepresent yourself on your resume?
Like when we had someone say that they have absolutely taken loan applications before in Encompass and know exactly how to lock, and it turns out that was completely false and had never ever done a loan application ever.
Yep. So here's the point of it, right? So when you have minimum standards and you hold to it, you're raising the bar. So what I believe is, don't set, I think so many people, the minimum standard is really not an acceptable number.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So they're thinking that's the minimum. I'll just give you an example for my company, right? So Legacy Mutual does mortgages, right? And believe it or not, the average number of loans per loan officer in the nation is only 2.5 loans per loan officer in the nation, all companies, all sizes. We literally have a minimum production standard of 5, so double the national average, or you're fired, right? So there's a lot of lovely people that don't work here anymore because they close 4 a month instead of 5 a month. But the reality is that that's still better than the national average. So they're a great employee for somebody else. They're just not a great employer for us. So what I mean by this is that raising the bar ends up vetting out the average. And what you end up with over time is more of those A players, and those A players, the people that you can hold more accountable to better production, more widgets, better service, because they're hardwired to be more successful than the average person.
Absolutely, which then plays to the core values, right? Yeah. Those people are more in line with core values because Legacy is really big on coachability, being coached, wanting to dream big, wanting to push yourself further, how to grow a team. And there's lots of things in place to support all of that. Yep. So if you're someone who is wired that way, then you're going to get over that 5 loan per month threshold pretty quickly because the resources are there. And then it goes to we are experts at mortgages. And the way you become an expert at mortgages is to do a lot of them.
Yep. So you can't claim to be an expert in mortgages and carry the same business card if you're closing 2 deals a month. You just can't.
You're not seeing enough. You're not seeing enough. So
So you're still practicing on clients, which is not what we're looking for.
Right.
But yeah, that's the idea is, really being clear about what those minimum standards are and holding to them, but making sure that you're training to them and recruiting to them as well, as in order to be fair.
And then do you have any time variance? Like if you have someone that comes in and they have all the makings of an A player, but they're doing 3 a month.
Great question. So we have this is getting into a lot of detail, but just as an example, yes, there should be ramp up periods that have been accomplished before.
Yeah.
So the expectation should be that you can do it. If somebody else can do it, you can do it, right?
It's been done once, yeah.
So, for example, a brand new person on the street that has learned for a year of Legacy University, what mortgages are. By the end of 1 year, if they want to go out and be a loan officer, great. You have 1 month pass. The second month you have to close 1, third one 2, okay. 4th, 5th, and 6th 3 average, and you've got to average 5 deals a month by the end of the first year. Average.
There you go.
Or, I love you, you're gone, right? Mm-hmm. And so I find that because of those higher standards and people know what they are, that we have more successful outcomes.
Yep.
Which is about holding people accountable.
Mm-hmm.
So it's really hard to have those, hey, you did great, but it wasn't great enough. But that's the trimming the fat, and the bottom 10% shouldn't work with your company if you're really trying to grow to the next level, right?
Totally.
So what's the next one?
Okay, so the next one is measurements and to measure.
Yep. So there's lots of books. We're going to actually do a whole different segment on dysfunctions and functional teams in general. But measurements are key to actually holding anyone accountable, because this feeling that you're doing great or this feeling that I'm a good employee matters like nothing to the real world, right? So
and there's a lot of things that make you feel like you're doing really well.
Well,
that are just
here's the
at
truth.
The end of the day.
There's a lot of people that work 40 hours and get a whole lot of stuff done, and a whole lot of people work 40 hours and don't. Mm-hmm. And there's a lot of people that work overtime and get less done than people that took off 2 hours early on Friday. Mm-hmm. So if the feeling is that you're being productive or not, it means shit unless I actually measure what that productivity really was. And so you can do this all the way down the road. So just because I'm in the business, I'll give you some examples. An underwriter should be able to underwrite at least 2 files a day. They should be able to review at least, new files per day. They got to sign off on at least 2 other files per day that might have been resubmitted. We've got a lead measurement for marketers. We got a lock measurement for loan officers. You've got, maximum numbers of days that a processor can hold a file before it's got to be turned into the underwriter in the first place. Mm-hmm. So you've got all these actual measurement points that you can tweak. Like think about if you're listening, you're sitting in front of the old school telephone system. You can see people pulling out and putting all these pins to connect people across the country back in the 50s and 60s, right? And so because you're measuring, if you're trying to improve efficiency or improve output or improve volume or units or profitability, you're tweaking dials.
Right.
You're not guessing who's working. You're not guessing what the feel of the market is. The numbers tell you. And I'll tell you, just because the whole reason this podcast started in the first place was to help people with their money. Mm-hmm. You want to find somebody that saves money, I promise you they do a budget. They will outsave everyone that doesn't do a budget.
Yeah.
People that actually measure the income and the expenses on a monthly basis simply have more at the end of their lifetime. Mm-hmm. P&Ls work the same way. Businesses that measure the input get better output than those people that wing it. And so measurement is an absolute key to accountability, because there's nothing to talk about other than feelings. And we know quite often feelings aren't reality when it gets to the bottom line. Yeah,
it's really a great way to pull people out of the emotion. So we'll just take like a salesperson as an example. Yeah. So you have a minimum number of calls, outbound calls you're supposed to make every week. And so you do that and you do that and you do that, but there's no results to show. So then that's the indicator of, okay, so the effort and the activity is there. So what's happening between the effort and the activity and the results? Yeah. And that's your roadmap. Like, okay, so we need to either work on who you're calling or what you're saying or what the initiative is.
Or double checking that you're not lying in the first place, that you're making the calls in the first place.
Well, I'm going to go ahead and assume that that's not the case. So it's like,
but here's the accountability piece, right? Hey, Mr. Salesman, if you call 100 people a day out of the phone book, you're going to get at least a sale every week. I guarantee you. 100 people a day, every single day, you're going to get a sale a week. No matter how bad your skill set is, no matter how bad your product is you're selling, I promise you call 500 people, you can sell one. by accident. You will accidentally call a cousin that figures out it's you, that you're the long lost cousin, and they'll buy shit from you. My point is what Brynn says is right. If you have if you continue to track numbers over time, it will just give you the averages.
Yeah.
So you can get a expected result based on the a specific input. Mm-hmm. And now we can just tweak those dials.
Right.
And what you said was spot on. What are you saying? Who are you talking to? Mm-hmm. How are you saying it?
Right.
And if we work on those three things, then we can always improve the results over time.
Yeah, for sure.
I love that.
For sure.
What's number 4?
All right. Number 4 goes back to our core values, which we talked about a lot in the previous episode. So sticking to your core values, and how do you reprimand or discipline and hold, I guess a better way to say is, how do you stay accountable to your core values?
Yeah, so I'll go, I think a better way to say this would be the best laid plans and somebody still fails at their job through results, right? So
well said.
How do you hold somebody accountable to those results when they're dropping the ball? Or how do you hold them accountable to core values when they're clearly acting outside of them, right? Mm-hmm. And so I've got a very simple 3-step process that, because I'm a nice person. I like my people. I can actually say I love many people on my team. Literally, I love them.
Yeah.
And so it's really difficult for a lot of leaders to have those direct conversations. It's easier when we're measuring stuff because now the numbers don't lie, right?
Right.
But what about violations of core values? What about, this person's drama? What about this person is poisoning the well? What about this person is talking shit about a teammate?
Yeah, it gets
like,
really...
what do you do? What do you do?
It gets so muddy and gray.
So number 1 is whether it's you didn't do a job or you're violating core value, the number 1 thing is to apologize as a leader, because you must not have explained what your expectation was.
Yeah, it wasn't clear.
So script number 1 is, Brynn, I am sorry. Clearly I didn't cover what our core values are. Our core values are solid: serve others, outstanding attitude, learn and grow, incredible initiative, and dream big. And the incredible initiative is super, super important to me. And I know that while you're in this training cycle right now, that there's plenty of hours of every day that it seems like there's nothing for you to do, but you're still a 40-hour a week employee. Mm-hmm. And so you're not going to sit idly for 5 hours. Right. So you have 3 options. You can shadow somebody else. You can read the FHA handbook, or you can shadow me. Mm-hmm. But you got to do something and take initiative, because we're going to have a lot of stuff, and it sounds like you might be a fast study and get through the material faster than I expected, but you got to have the initiative to go find the next thing and move the needle forward. Does that make sense? Yeah. So my apologies. Just want to be really clear. Your 40 hours, we're going to give you what I want you to do. Mm-hmm. But if you find extra hours on your side, can you just do me a favor and work on that for me?
Yeah.
Cool. Do you have any other questions?
No.
Is there anything I can help you train on to make sure that this doesn't happen again?
I don't think so.
Perfect. Right? So that would be well received by any employee, in my opinion.
Yeah.
It is an unemotional assault on the behavior, not on the person, right? So we're talking about the behavior we don't like. We're talking about solutions and offering training.
Because here's what you're thinking in your head. Why is this person so freaking lazy?
Right. How the hell did I pay 40 hours a week for 10 hours of work?
For this lazy ass.
Right. Which is real. But it's easier because remember, we identified the core value.
That's the thing. That's where the core values pull you out of that emotion and make it a much easier conversation to have, especially leaders that are high eyes.
Or hired their sister.
Or it's mom.
Yes,
mom, just do whatever you want.
So the second step, so let's just assume that Brynn is a B or C player. And so apparently she didn't listen to my instructions, and I caught her again. So round two of this reprimand would be, my quote would be, or script would be, I'm confused.
Help me understand.
Because it's literally, this is where you seek first understand. Because clearly you don't get yourself fired. I mean, I'm assuming you're here for the whole paycheck, not part of it. So when you don't work 40 hours a week, I'm assuming that you're expecting to only be paid 20 hours, right? I'm joking, but think about that. That's the mindset as I'm confused, okay? So Brynn, I'm confused. I feel like literally last week we talked about how this is a 40-hour a week job. I'm going to give you as much stuff to fill up your plate as possible. But my expectation is that you find initiative and find other things to do, shadow other people, shadow me, or read the FHA handbook. Mm-hmm. And yet I just found out that you clocked out at 10 o'clock and came back at 2 o'clock, which is called a very, very, very long lunch. So I need to understand what's going on.
I don't even know what to say.
Okay. Which is great. This is what we're probably going to run across, right? And so it doesn't matter what you say, because here's the
I
deal.
didn't think you would find out.
Okay. Or whatever other BS or smart thing they can come up with. And maybe, just maybe, mom died and literally she went to the hospital the afternoon and didn't tell me. And I'm like, oh my God, please know that you can tell me that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And I am so sorry. We would support you anyway. I'm surprised you even came back at 2. You should have taken off 3 days, whatever you need, right? So this is the seek first, understand piece, right? But barring that kind of stuff, the real answer is, look, I can't be more clear. I just want to reiterate one more time that
I was
the job
listening to a
is
podcast while I got my hair done.
the job is X.
Yeah.
The behavior is Y. Do you need any other training? Do you need anything else from me?
Do you need ideas coming up with ways to fill your time?
Is there anything I can do to help you be successful? Because I really like you and I really want you to keep your job. But if this happens again, the next step will be a write-up, right? So first step is, I'm sorry. Second step is, I'm confused. Third step, guess what? It's an actual real deal write-up so you don't get sued, right? So Brynn, I'm sure you know why we're meeting today. So I'm going to go ahead and put this in front of you, and you're going to sign this because this is your first and final, or whatever your state allows. But that is the correct progression for keeping a teammate accountable, keeping a business accountable. Is at some point the rubber has to hit the road, but creating a process that's not dependent on how pissed you are this time versus how much you like this person versus
which sounds super simple,
right.
And it is it's a little difficult.
And that's why you got to do this up front.
Yes.
What is your process? What is your system to hold people accountable, and talk about it up front? So when we actually started doing this, we had one meeting at that time. We said, hey guys, this is what's going to happen moving forward. I don't want to have any pettiness. I don't want there to be any favorites. Like, this is what we're going to do from now on.
Yeah. And you just have to commit to nipping stuff. You just have to. You have to, because what's going to happen is you get to a point that you've avoided it because you didn't want to deal with it. You didn't have time.
And it's so much worse.
And then you want to, like, in your mind, it's time for them to be fired, yet you can't because you have no proof that you've even talked to them about it.
You never wrote them up. You never
wrote
told
them
anyone
up,
else.
and so they're going to come in and be fired and be super fucking lost as to why they're being fired.
Which is actually, it's a failure of leadership there, in my opinion, because no one should ever be confused when they're fired. That's not fair.
It's not fair.
So you're telling me that you've been this pissed at me for 4 months and I never knew, and you pretended like you love me? That's bullshit. That's bullshit.
That's unkind.
Right.
That is unkind.
And I love that that's the word you use, because to me, the accountability piece is kindness. It doesn't mean you're going to like it. But Brynn, my job is to help you make money, to protect your family. So if I'm going to risk you losing money and losing your job, me not saying the hard thing is unkind.
Yeah.
At the end of the day,
unkind.
It's unkind.
It is. And here's the other thing too. There is such thing as right person, wrong seat on the bus. And so what that means is you've got the makings of a really great team member that is in the wrong position.
And read Energy Bus about that.
Yes. So these conversations could bring to light some of those things. Like, well, the reason I don't look for anything to do is because I think this is the most boring position ever. Like, none of this is playing to my strengths. And so, it's really hard for me to find things that
which means you might be fired, or we might find a better place for you.
Okay. So tell me what you don't like about it. Like, what is it, and so it really does open the door for good conversation. That sometimes it can be recovered, other times it won't be able to. But majority of the time, I think it will fix it.
And by the way, last thing on this before we go to number 5, the last piece of the puzzle here is there's lots of conversation about should you be public or private in these conversations when it comes to holding people accountable. And I would say I've learned that it depends on the person, right? And I'll tell you why. Most of the time, I would say most people need to be behind closed doors, or with a witness, but behind closed doors, most of the time, because so many people take it so personally and are embarrassed by a conversation that's abrupt and direct.
Especially if you have transitioned to a full team of A players.
Right.
Like,
it's tough.
It's tough. Don't call me out. And
Right. On the flip side, somebody like me, I've been in coaching and been coached by like really direct people for years and years and years. I'd expect nothing less. I screw up and I'll take the punch from everybody else.
I think that kind of plays to the culture of the team. If you have a culture that people enter into and it's always been you get called out, then that's kind of what they get conditioned to, or they don't really quickly.
So true.
So I don't know that it can be by person, because it would be like, what's the culture?
Culture of the team.
Culture of the team is that we reprimand whatever,
publicly.
have constructive publicly. So that just people become very used to that.
Yep.
But if you're the one, because based on the boss's perception of you that you can handle being called out, but you're the only one, everybody else is behind closed
I think
doors.
that you answered that better than I did. Good for you. I agree with that. Absolutely.
Thanks.
Number 5. What is number 5?
Check on the A player list.
Yep. That's right. That's why we're doing this together. That's great. That's right. I can admit when I'm wrong. I think that was a better answer.
I appreciate that. Okay, number 5, the 5th way to elevate accountability on your team is to have great onboarding. Great onboarding.
I can't talk about this enough.
Ooh,
Onboarding and training. It is skipped, shortened, abbreviated, not followed through on, meetings canceled. With way too many teams and companies nationwide. If there
the newest
is a good
person
one.
starts to train the newest
right.
person.
It's really kind of a disaster is what you say.
It's a disaster.
And so you can't really expect your company to grow, your team to grow as fast as it possibly can and maintain the level of service or the integrity of the product, whatever that might be, without significant extra time and energy into processing the onboarding and training and time under tension, right? Mm-hmm. So I'm sure we've talked about this in some other episode, but when Brynn started, what she does within my space, within our business space, it just hadn't happened. And so literally for 6 months,
this is so awesome.
It's cool, right? Like looking back, like it's trailblazer. I love it.
Yeah.
So the first 6 months, Brynn literally was my shadow, and she said nothing to nobody. She watched me call people. She went on appointments with me. I made my appointments. I closed the appointments, and she was just a shadow.
I had no office. It was literally like a storage closet.
Yeah. I mean, but you shadowed me, right?
I did, yeah, for sure.
And so for a full, imagine this, guys. I'm paying a full-time salary for somebody to do nothing, other than to shadow me for 6 months. And then the next 6 months, her job was to set appointments for me. And then we would both go on the appointments, but I would talk and she wouldn't. And so she was training on the appointment setting. And then the third 6 months, so we're talking about now years 1 to 1.5, she would set the appointment. We would go on it together. She would start the appointments, but if she got in trouble, she'd give me a look or hand it over to me, and then I'd finish it out or close it.
Yeah.
And then the last 6 months, so we're now years 1.5 to 2 years. We'd both go on the appointments together that she set, and then I was allowed to say nothing. She would close it or she wouldn't. And if she didn't close it, I wouldn't save her. And on the drive out, we'd be talking. I'd be like, so where do you think you dropped this one?
Which is literally the hardest thing ever, to sit there quietly.
But how else do you train somebody appropriately in sales without letting somebody die on the vine and learn from that experience and understand what they could have done differently? And so I would say that that was probably my best training I've ever done personally.
100%.
Was the 2 years with you as an example.
100%.
Right? So go back to thinking about your boss. So if you're listening, how much time did you get one-on-one attention like that, training for your job with your boss? Yeah. Most people would say the answer was next to nothing. Here's a phone, a week or two, and slowly warm up to things. And so if you really want to have a highly accountable team, because you set high expectations with A players, it starts with great onboarding and great training.
Which is a commitment.
It's a big commitment.
Huge commitment.
What other thoughts do you have on that?
So great onboarding, I think, looks like everything. It's laying all the groundwork. So where are they going to sit? What are they going to do? What their job is.
What the logins are.
Where
the bathroom is. What the breaks are.
Yeah, what they're going to do every day for 30 days. It shows a lot of professionalism. And
shows investment.
Yeah, and we're adding to our onboarding checklist like as recent as yesterday. I'm like, this is something I miss every single time somebody is onboarded. Katie, can you help me add this to a checklist? Like, I'll do the work if you can add it to your master checklist and just say, hey, it's time to update the team sheet. I miss it every freaking time, every time. So yeah, just showing them that you are, you're on your A game. I think that's a really good precedent. And be clear, like this takes work and it takes time. There has definitely been moments where people are starting and we're like, okay, so where should we put them?
And that's where an onboarding checklist starts. Exactly right. But here's the idea. The whole idea of this small segment was to get a framework of what's required long-term to create a very good, functioning, highly accountable team. And some of these things might take you years to develop. Some things you can change in a moment just by making a choice that from now on, my minimum expectation is blank, period. Yeah. And if you just started onboarding somebody 2 weeks ago, maybe you need to go back and do a little bit of work and tighten things up a little bit. But
yes, and also ask for feedback. That's where we've gotten a lot of our ideas too.
Always.
Is when you do onboard somebody on like month 2 or 3, circle
what can
back.
we have done better?
Yeah, what can we do better?
What order should we have done things? What should we change? But if you enjoyed this episode, please like and subscribe us once again.
Absolutely. So subscribe to us, and then also don't forget to check out our Short Sense page, which is the best 3 to 8 minutes of every episode for a little bit of a shorter digestion of your daily content. So thank you so much for listening, and
we'll see you next time, guys. Have a good one.
Cheers.